Good morning to everyone. Christmas was finally over, and the preacher's wife dropped into her easy chair and said, "Boy, am I ever tired." And her husband looked over at her and said, "I had to conduct 2 special services last night and 3 today. I gave a total of 5 sermons. Why are you so tired?" "Dear," she replied, "I had to listen to all of them." One of my favorite things at Christmas, obviously, if you've been by our house, the lights. You know, lights start going up earlier every year. And I'm not sure about, there's some people who leave their lights up, like June or July. But, well, it's your house, your rules. But anyway, in New York's Hudson Valley, they're called the Gay family. They hold the world record for the most Christmas lights ever at a private residence. They have 700,000 lights. Can you imagine that, Bill? And you read about them, their tradition began back in 1995 when their daughter was born, and they put up a few lights outside, and then it grew and more and more and more. And, I kind of get that for sure. And I tell you what, they have nothing. Clark Griswold has nothing on that family, right? But Christmas lights started out as candles. These candles were attached to the tree using wax or pins. And the practice began in Germany during the 17th century. And over the next 200 years, it progressed eventually to the United Kingdom and to North America around 1830. But think about this, placing lit candles on a real Christmas tree. Can you see something happening there? Yeah, it became a huge fire hazard, and accidents began to happen, and they say by 1908, a lot of insurance companies would no longer cover claims of Christmas tree fire damage. In 1882, the first Christmas tree to be lit by electric lights was seen in New York. It was by a guy by the name of Edward Johnson, and he just happened to be a friend of Mr. Lightbulb Thomas Edison. And then by 1930, Christmas lights were common in the United States. Now, here's what's interesting. This coming Wednesday, December 21st, is winter solstice. I never can say that word right. Solstice. There you go. The longest night of the year as far as darkness. But here's what I want us to think about. During this darkest part of the year, Christmas pierces that darkness with light. I mean, lights were important in the very first Christmas. The angels did their, dazzling light show in the sky. In Luke 2, it says the glory of the Lord shone around them. Shepherds went to Bethlehem. How? What did they follow? A star. Light. Light, in fact, is just it's a major theme in the Bible. The word light's actually used 272 times in the Bible. 1 John 1:5 says this, "This is the message which we've heard from Him and declare to you, God is light, and in Him is no what? Darkness." The very first command, you're wanting a question. She said she was ready to answer a question. The very first commandment God gave at creation, let there be light. There you go. Good job. Let there be light. Christ coming into the world is a picture in the Bible as light coming into darkness. I want you to turn to John chapter 1. John chapter 1. Verses 4 through 9. Now, I know maybe depending on your version, but the New American Standard here, I want you to notice the word light is capitalized. And how many times it's used in these few verses. I think it's 6 times. In Him, I'm talking about the Lord, was life. And the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There came a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light, which coming into the world, notice this, enlightens every man. What's one of the oldest fears in the world? Darkness. Darkness. Everybody has dark days, dark chapters in their lives. But Jesus says that he came so we wouldn't have to remain in that dark. So what we want to do, I want us to look at a few types of dark days and how Christ can bring light to our seasons of darkness. First one's the dark days of disappointment. Job 30 verse 26 says this, I hoped for happiness and light, but trouble and darkness came instead. Have you ever felt that way? You know, we hope for one thing and something totally opposite happens. I mean, the fact is that, and we all know this, life doesn't always work out as we've planned, right? Situations don't always work themselves out. You know, we always say, well, it'll work itself out. Not always. You know, and you know, it seems like in our world right now, what seems right and fair, it rarely happens. Now, think of Mary. She had to experience disappointment. She was told, you're going to be the mother of the Messiah, the Son of God. And surely she thought, wow, the Son of God, he deserves a royal entry. You know, probably staying at the Bethlehem Resort. You know, maybe, I don't know, ticker tape parade. No person should be born in a cow stall. Can you all imagine, mothers, your babies being born in a feed trough? I mean, you know, the donkey's nose has been there. You know, don't wrap the newborn in those rags. They smell like sheep. Have you ever thought that your life resembled maybe a Bethlehem stable? Crude in some spots, smelly in others, not all that glamorous, and maybe the people in our circle remind us of some of those stable animals. You know, maybe some clueless sheep or stubborn donkeys or whatever. Y'all want to think on that. But like Joseph, we knocked on that innkeeper's door. But we were told it's too late, or maybe we're told, you know, we're too sick, too dull, too damaged, too poor, too whatever. And we begin to wonder then if God is a place for a person like us. But we find our answer in the Bethlehem stable. If God, I want us to really understand it, if God was willing to wrap himself in rags and be born in a barn, then all questions about his love for us, I mean, they're off the table. When Christ was born, so was our hope. I mean, if he's willing to be born in that barn, then expect him to be there for us in whatever. There's no limit to his love, even in the darkest moments of our disappointment. So when life is disappointing, look to the light of the manger and remember God's relentless love for us. Stress. Psalm 18:6, David said this, in my distress I called on the Lord. I cried to God for my help, and he heard my voice. And we all know distress is when we feel overwhelmed, hopeless, helpless. But again, I want us to think of the stress of Mary. All right, ladies, you're 9 months pregnant. You're away from your family, and you have to ride a donkey. A donkey, okay? Not a vehicle, a donkey. From Nazareth to Bethlehem. Anyone know how far that is? Anybody want to guess? How many miles?
600.
No? Lower. That's real close. 90. 90 miles. And most scholars say that takes about 4 days by donkey. I don't know how, if they rode a donkey to sea or what. But that's like going from Sudan to Post. Now, I've ridden in an ambulance with kidney stones. You know, that's man's baby, right? From Littlefield to Lubbock, which is only, 30-something miles? And I cried like a little girl every time they hit a bump. So, and imagine, and they had shocks, and a donkey doesn't have shocks, right? Imagine Mary's stress level by the time she got to Bethlehem. But here's the question. Why did God make them take such a journey? I mean, why did He go so far? I think it's because He wants us to know that He gets us. He understands how we feel, and He's faced what we have faced. The Lord can bring light to our times of stress. One other thought on that, in times of stress, the best to me, read Psalm 46. Read Psalm 46. Verse 1 says, God's our refuge and strength, abundantly available for help. Abundant. John 12:35, the last phrase says this, He who walks in darkness does not know where he's going. Doubt. We've lost our way and we don't know what to do. You know, we look to our past and we feel disappointment. We look at the present and we're stressed. But then we look to the future and it's easy to be doubtful. And we worry. And we know the verse for worry, right? Philippians 4:6, worry about nothing, pray about what? Everything. You know, we cannot face a crisis or a doubt if we don't face God first. God holds it together, and He'll hold it together for us even when we're doubting. You know, would we like to rediscover a deep, abiding assurance, you know, in the goodness and power and presence of God? Can God shine His light of hope into our doubting hearts? And the answer is yes, He can. I mean, He's done it throughout history. You know, the Psalms are full of doubt. Remember David in Psalm 6? I mean, he said, he's crying out to God and he says, God, have mercy on me. I'm faint. My bones are in agony. My soul is in deep anguish. I'm worn out from groaning. My eyes grow weary with sorrow. And we can relate to that, can't we? I mean, at that point, he's exhausted. He's worn out. And all of us have cried so many tears that we can't cry anymore. And the man after God's own heart, like some of us, can't understand why the God who has the power to change something won't do it. And we've all been there. But here's what I want us to remember. We can still hope in the dark. Because as we grow to know God, He'll reveal even more of His love and light to us. We can doubt, we can question, we can struggle in our faith, but instead of finding the questions distancing, us from God, I think we will discover something else. Honest questions, sincere doubts, and deep hurts can draw us closer to God than ever before. Every one of us face doubts and questions in life. But here's the question for us. Will we allow the doubts and pressures of life to push us away from God or push us closer to Him? Cling to the light of the Lord. If it's in the hospital when our lives fall apart, maybe our health fails, maybe families collapse, all kinds of scenarios when all that's good seems to fall apart. Keep walking in the light of the Lord. And we have to always remember, as bad as life can get at times, this is still God's world. He's still on His throne. He's still in charge. And Jesus still died on the cross for us. And we can have a home in heaven because of that. One more thought here. Dark days of depression. It's those days when we just say, what's the use? You feel like giving up. You remember in World War II, Winston Churchill said this, the light has gone out of Europe. And I think at times we can relate to that statement. We become depressed when, everywhere we look seems dark. Jeremiah felt that way. In Jeremiah 3:19-20, he says this, the thought of my pain, he says, is bitter poison. I think of it constantly and my spirit is depressed. Now, every one of us, we all have times of being depressed. But here's the thing, God doesn't want us to live in that state of depression. Depression's been called a black hole. And when we stay in that black hole at rock bottom and we live in misery, that only leads to, guess what? Deeper despair and deeper depression. And it's in those times when the Lord wants to be our closest friend. Turn to the Lord. Go before the Lord as David did in the Psalms. Here's the thing, and you've heard me say this a million times before, but be honest with God about our feelings. The psalmists were. Express our thoughts. Be specific. And don't worry, I guarantee you He's heard worse. Right? Remember the Lord's promise in Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near the brokenhearted, and He saves those who are crushed in spirit. Let me close with this. The verse Larry read for us, promise from the Lord. He says, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have, and I love this phrase, the light of life. The light of life is what will help us deal with those dark days of disappointment, distress, doubt, and depression. Let me close with just two other verses, and then Drew, you can come lead us in a song. Psalm 27:1, David said this, the Lord is my light and salvation, whom shall I fear? Isaiah 2 verse 5, Isaiah says this, come and let us walk in the light of the Lord. So as we enjoy, all the beautiful Christmas lights, I want us to remember that while, they're beautiful, they're only reminders of the one true light, Jesus, our Lord. If you need to come this morning, won't you, as we stand and sing?